Okay, here we go.
Can you hear me?
Matt
Can you
Cox
hear
in
me?
the
Okay, we're
house.
good. All right.
Hey, so I know I got you on relatively late notice, but thanks for joining on. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Doing
Awesome.
great.
Cool. So, for those of you who don't know who Matt Cox is, he's certainly not yet a part of the Kindle publishing community, but he is a true crime writer who's got a very colorful past, and he's coming to prominence and going viral on the net. So, can you share with those at home who are you?
Let's see. I grew up in Tampa, Florida. I ended up owning a mortgage company or I'm sorry. I always say a mortgage company, and people don't know what that. A brokerage, like a brokerage company where I brokered loans, and I had like 10 or 12 employees. Anyway, um, and this was back when subprime loans were big, and I ended up getting in trouble. I ended up getting in trouble, and I basically lost the mortgage company, and then because got caught basically lying on an application. That's the simplest version.
Mhm.
So I then turned around, and instead of doing the right thing and like claiming bankruptcy and starting over, I then went ahead and undertook a major fraud. I started creating fake identities, having them buy houses, raising the purchase price or the values of the homes in the area, and having these fake identities borrow millions of dollars. And over the course of a few years, my fake identities ended up borrowing like 11.5 million. And then the FBI came to arrest me. I took off on the run. I was on the run for 3 years. I was on the FBI's most wanted list. I was on the Secret Services. I was number one on the Secret Services most wanted list. And I I stole another $3.5 million while I was on the run. And I had fake driver's licenses. Well, not fake driver's licenses. I mean, they were real driver's licenses.
They just didn't belong
Um,
to you.
they didn't belong to me.
Yeah.
I had a couple dozen fake passports in different people's names, and traveled in and out of the country and as different people, and continued to borrow money. Eventually, after 3 years, I was caught, and I ended up uh, while I was on the run, there was 40 or 50 articles on me between the St. Pete Times, Tampa Tribune, Chicago, Chicago, Chicago
Chicago
Tribune.
Herald?
No, I think it was Chicago Tribune.
Tribune, yeah.
Um, I was in Forbes magazine, Fortune magazine, Bloomberg. I was on a TV show called American Greed. Another TV show called Dateline did a couple episodes on me. So I was, it was a highly publicized case. And I don't know what, it was kind of flashy. I'm flying around the country with, and defrauding banks out of millions of dollars. So, it had a certain cachet to it. So anyway, I ended up getting a stiff sentence. I go to prison, to federal prison. And while I was incarcerated, I started writing, and I wrote my own memoir. And then I started really, realizing while you talk to all these guys, you start realizing there's some amazing stories in here. Like, why is nobody writing these stories? And periodically I'd read some story in Rolling Stone magazine or Wired magazine or something. I'd go, this is kind of like Jimmy's story, but man, Jimmy's story is way better than this.
Hmm.
How did this end up? Why aren't they talking to Jimmy? Why aren't they talking to my buddy Pete? Well, how come? And so I ended up being approached I started meeting different people. I ended up approaching a guy named Ephraim Deveroli, and I wrote his memoir. And there was a movie made about him called War Dogs.
Right.
It was actually, I guess, supposedly the movie was made about. The movie was supposedly made about David Packow's, but the movie is called War Dogs, and Jonah Hill plays the character of Ephraim Deveroli. Well, I wrote his memoir. So, and then I got a couple of guys in Rolling Stone magazine. It was Lance Barabbas and his brothers, and a guy named Douglas Dodd. And so I got I hooked up with a reporter and I got an article placed in Rolling Stone magazine. I ended up getting a book deal for that. I got a small advance. I wrote the book. You know, it was in Barnes and Nobles and whatever, all the chain. And so then I realized I started, that story was optioned by New Line Cinema. And so I decided, you know, I got plenty of time. Maybe I ought to start thinking about doing this, really doing this as a career. I love doing it. I love crime. I love true crime. And so it's kind of an outlet instead of actually committing crime. It's an outlet for me to write about crime, about other people's crimes. And so it's kind of cathartic, you know, it helps me. And I really like it as I'm a girl. So, wow, that's not going to happen. Okay, let's go ahead. I'm going to turn this off.
Yeah, sure.
So what ended up happening is I started writing with synopses for stories of stories. So instead of writing a whole 300-page book or 250-page book, I would just write the synopsis. And there's a guy by the name of Joshua Bierman. You know who Joshua Bierman is? Did you ever see the movie Argo?
I've heard of the movie Argo. I don't recall seeing it, though, in the theater.
Magazine called The Great Escape, and it was about the Iranian hostages. And it was a magazine. It was an article. It got optioned, and it turned it. Ben Affleck. What's his name? Ben Affleck.
There is Ben Affleck. Was he that?
Ben Affleck. Okay.
Yeah.
He ends up doing a movie about it, and it's called Argo. Well, what happened was Bierman turned around and started a website called Epic. And instead of putting his stories directly into magazines, he just writes the stories and sticks them on the website. I mean, why? Anyway, now what happens is people just go to Epic and they buy their nonfiction stories. Well, I thought, you know, there's not really that I knew of, and I was in prison, but I'm reading about these things that are happening. I thought there's not really a website that's dedicated to true crime. And I thought, you know what I'll do is I'm just going to collect these stories, and when I get out, I'll put together a website and put these stories on. And some of the stories I'll turn into books, and some of them on the website and see if I can. I've come up with a website. I've done some podcasts on my story and other stories, and that's it. You know, and so some of the podcasts have gotten like 1 million hits, 1.5, 1.8 million hits. I've been on Valuetainment. I was on Concrete. I just did a true crime one called for Sean Atwood. He's in the UK. Did something called Vlad TV. You know, so I've been doing these podcasts, which is helping my book sales, my memoir, which I self-published, and I've self-published a few other books. And but yeah, that's where I'm at. I've been out of prison. I've been out of custody less than a year. And then you contacted me. That's it. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I first saw you on Valuetainment, and then you were just picking up momentum and traction online with Concrete and especially DJ Vlad. And I'm sure the DJ Vlad views will come up over time. And so I contacted you as I thought your story was very fascinating. And you are a self-published writer. So therefore, technically, you are perfectly appropriate to interview here. And so for those that don't know, your website is InsideTrueCrime.com.
InsideTrueCrime.com. That's the website. And then the YouTube channel, which most of those stories have been, I've had them converted to little audiobooks. You know, they're maybe an hour long, an hour and 20 minutes. And I have a different guy, people narrate them. And they're on my YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is Matt Cox and Inside True Crime.
Right. So I wanted to talk about the technicalities of how your overall publishing infrastructure is set up. So I did obviously notice that you have your shorts narrated on YouTube. Unless I've missed out on something, are they also on Audible or anywhere as for sale as an audiobook online?
No.
So we're going to be taking some notes in this session. So
I'm gonna take some notes because you know what you're doing,
I'm
and
going to help you make some
I
more money, man.
don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, you do
I
know what
and
you're doing. You just need some guidance and get up to date with best practices in 2020.
right. So what do you?
So
Your suggestion is what?
you should definitely consider, and you should do this actually, since you have the narration done for these books, and you could be making some money with YouTube and maybe it's monetized, but you could actually sell these audiobooks through Audible. It's Amazon's audiobook platform.
Yeah,
Um,
my memoir is on Audible. Like came out like 2 days ago.
yes, your memoir is, but how about your short stories, the ones
No,
that are
none,
on
none of
YouTube?
my no,
You could
none of my
monetize
short.
those as well. People
Yep.
will buy 1 hour duration audiobooks, especially if it's your brand. If people are into true crime and they want to be entertained, you can monetize that in addition to what you have on YouTube. Um, I mean, this is going to be a little bit technical, like thinking 3 steps ahead. But since you've got your own brand going, check out audible.com. I would recommend not being Audible exclusive, meaning you're not signed on to a 7-year contract to be exclusively published on Amazon because you're on YouTube with these books already. And you want to be on the Barnes and Noble portal. You want to be on the Apple Store, in the Google Store. And that's possible with your audiobooks. For that to be distributed wide on the internet through those different channels, you can go to a website called findawayvoices.com. So
What
that's
is it? Find
find
what?
a way. So findawayvoices.com. And that's a platform where you can upload your audiobook and the platform will distribute your work across over 20 different channels. So I've mentioned you the big ones. There's also a lot of other smaller ones. And in addition to being distributed to over 20 channels, you will also be distributed to libraries, public libraries all across the US for consumption. So that would be a good way for you to monetize all of the work that you've got going. I don't want to make any income claims, but I can see just doing this making you an extra grand a month minimum with all the work that you've got.
I mean, I could use an extra grand.
We all could, man. I mean, no matter where we are, right? It's a freaking
Right.
car payment or car lease. In addition to that, I was also looking at InsideTrueCrime.com. I mean, it's a WordPress site. I figured that out fairly quickly. How effective has your site been in collecting email news through your newsletter sign up? Like, have you been collecting emails? Have you been tracking that?
I haven't tracked it at all. I mean, like it's set up. I had someone help me set it up,
Right.
and I am assuming people are signing up, but I haven't tracked anything. I mean, it was just like the girl that helped me set up what she said, do you want people to subscribe? So like every time you put out a new book, you can notify them. And I was like, yeah, sure. Well, of course, the problem is I was never explained how any of that works. So
Oh
people
man.
sign up. I don't track it. I have analytics on it. I know
Yeah.
very, very little. I barely know how to use the analytics. Like I'll go check and see, okay, a couple hundred people were there yesterday. You know, I've had 1,500 people come in over the course of, you know, in one day, and then maybe 1,000. And, you know, whenever I do the podcast, it like spikes and then it goes back down.
Right. Of course, it's website traffic.
Right.
So what I would this is a big piece of the puzzle with publishing because having an email list, an email audience gives you so much versatility. As you just mentioned, you can use an email list to announce the launch of a book. Likewise, you can actually gather email subscribers, like take some of them, ask them to receive a free copy of your book in exchange for an honest review on Amazon. If that's something you want to consider with gathering reviews for not just your memoir has already plenty of reviews, but your other works that might not have the visibility or exposure that they could have otherwise.
Right.
So I know like we're gonna like tackle a lot of stuff and this is all new to you. But I would recommend like really getting into learning how to use the email campaign platform that's collecting your emails and learning how to like launch those newsletters. Newsletter launches are super important as a writer, as a publisher, for all of your work. And I think what could be more effective than just having that sign up link, like we don't know how many people are like signing up for your newsletter every day. You could consider providing a lead magnet. A lead magnet is like a free incentive for someone to join your list. So in exchange for providing this work, people will have to join your list. So if you have maybe a book you want to give away, you can figure that out. You can have people join your newsletter, and when they join your newsletter, they'll receive a copy of your book. And you might think to yourself right now, well, that's cool, but how do I set that up? How do I do that? And you can check out a site called BookFunnel, bookfunnel.com. And BookFunnel will help you set that all up. And it's got a little bit of a learning curve, but once you go through the setup and steps, that's a way you can be much more effective in getting out people to sign up for your email list. So just like a quick stat, it's not unusual for 60% of all my website traffic to view my BookFunnel link, my lead magnet page, and sign up for the website. So you can have 10,000 people see your sign up page. You can have actually 6,000 people sign up for your email just because they're getting a free book. Who wouldn't want to do it?
Right.
So that's something as well.
Who's paying for the book?
So, yeah.
I mean, keep in mind, I got out of prison or out of custody less than a year ago.
I know, man. And things have evolved on the internet like in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not printing out books and giving away. That's printing the book. That's $4. Mailing it. Now you're looking at $7 or $8 for an email address.
Yeah, man. But how much does it cost to deliver the ebook, the PDF file?
The ebook?
Yeah, how much does it cost to deliver? Nothing.
Okay.
So you're going to be giving out.
I'm thinking physical book.
No, man. No. So this is all automated. You don't have to do anything. Like the whole goal, the whole premise of the publishing business is that to a degree, you can make this somewhat passive and have everything automated as a system so that you can still have your time freedom and location freedom with your publishing business. And I know you love to write, but if you want to take a day off and still make money, as you've seen with book sales, you can do that.
Right.
So you can automate having an ebook sent out to the recipient. And that's something that BookFunnel as a platform will automate. So that's something to take into consideration. I did want to bring up something on your website. Why are all the covers so different looking? Are you using different cover designers? Like what's going on there?
What do you mean so different looking? I mean, they all have the subject on the cover.
They do, but like the styling and like the graphic design of each cover is different from cover to cover. Like the typography, the font, the placement of your author name. Like, are you using a different cover designer each time?
No, I designed them all.
Okay.
I mean, I just was, I think that, one of them's about, if one of them is about, gosh, I'm trying to think, credit card fraud, that's clearly going to be, I think that should have a different look than the one about a guy who gets, is a couple of brothers that are robbing drug dealers. I mean,
sure.
I wasn't really going, the only consistency I was going for was that each one had the actual subject's photo on it to let the reader know, look, this is a real story. This is not fiction. And that, and here's the person, here's the guy that actually did this. This is his story. So I wasn't really looking for anything super consistent. And it was also, keep in mind, I designed those. I was using, like I said, I just gotten out. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Sure.
So, and I know some of them are a little bit harder to read, but then again, I wasn't selling books. Does it make sense? Like
Yeah.
it was just something on the website to say, hey, look, this is a story. Here's a jacket cover.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, thinking forward, you will be scaling up. You are going to be more popular as a brand. Like I consider all of your true crime books as the Matthew Cox brand.
Right.
So with that, you can definitely step up your game with the covers. And I know you designed them yourself, and you're still like gathering all the ropes on how this all works with publishing and writing. But may you consider that, like for your books that are related to credit card fraud, perhaps brand them as like a series of books, like a series of books in a true crime credit fraud compilation. And for like, if you have 3 books related to that, have those 3 books have a similar look in that they look like they belong to a series. And you can actually set up having series pages on Amazon. And by doing that, by having your books presented as a logical series, you will get better read through. Meaning, if readers liked Credit Card Fraud Book 1, and there's a series page, they'll be like, wow, this is cool. I also see on Amazon that you can get book 2 and book 3 and read those as well. So we call that read through, meaning you want customers to not just read one book from your brand, but read all of the books.
Right.
And by doing that, you're going to make much more money from recurring customer revenue income coming in. So that's something to consider.
Yeah. My only issue with that is that, these are standalone stories and they're not series because it's nonfiction. So
right.
The guy has a story and then that's it. There's no, okay, well now we're going to have him go to, the United Kingdom and he's going to do that. But he didn't go to the United Kingdom. I mean,
you can have standalones as a series. Like I'm in Romance. I know this probably sounds out of the blue, but I publish Romance, and you can still have standalones so long as the tropes are still coherent as belonging to a series. So you can have Jack, Billionaire Boss Book 1, and then Bill, Billionaire Boss Book 2, and they can be standalones. But as you know, like with True Greed, the show, that could like be seen as a series as well. All different stories, but they follow a similar trope from story to story. So that's something you can still set up.
Right. Yeah. In the future, I'm actually working on a story right now, which is actually, I don't know, I was just going to write a synopsis on it, but the more I'm investigating the story, the way I do it is just, I think it, it's nonfiction. So, I'm ordering guys' transcripts. I'm reading about the articles. I'm interviewing, you got to interview them. You have to, you interview their family members, that sort of thing. So it's a whole process. Well, as like the story I thought it was, it's becoming a much larger, longer story. Mm-hmm. And I was going to do a synopsis, and I am going to do a synopsis, but I just, the more I think about it, it would probably make an interesting kind of a series because it's just such an amazing story.
I'm already thinking for you. If you want to like make a short synopsis as like a giveaway, as a preview, as a lead magnet for readers, and if they download the synopsis, you can have a link in the back of the book, ebook, or in the paperback to the full story. That can really serve you in getting more traffic to the full version once it's all done. So, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do with your publishing business to get more readership and make more money in that regard.
Right.
Something also to consider, I know I'm just going on and on here, but this one's good. Have you ever considered, granted these are all standalones, bundling your books together? You're allowed to actually compile like a series or multiple books and form them as a bundle so that you can have book 1, book 2, book 3 that you've already published, but combine the files together and make another listing for all the books together as one collection, one bundle. Readers love bundles as it gives them value in both getting all of your work in one product, and also there's a cost savings to it. So like if book 1, 2, 3 costs $10 each, and you're giving the bundle of those 3 books for $25, the customer will get all 3 books as they want, but they'll save about $5.
Right.
That's a good way to increase your royalties as an author and publisher.
You know, what's interesting about that is that like there's a lot of the books that I'm up in the book. So even though I'm telling your story. Let's say you're let's say you're like, a counterfeiter, credit card counterfeiter. And I meet you, and I as I tell the story, I talk about how I met you here. We discussed this, and then as I'm telling your story, I'll jump back sometime to me interviewing you in prison. And then I jump back into your story. So 85% of the story is your story. 15% is kind of like what's happening in prison as we're telling the story. And one of the stories, I've got a story called It's Insanity. It's about a lawyer in prison. The lawyer who actually did all my legal work, he got 12 years knocked off my sentence.
Nice. I know about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I got 26 years and he got 12 years knocked off. So he's amazing. And I wrote a synopsis about him, which was a really long synopsis. It was like 17,000 words. That's pretty
long for
an
a
hour.
Synopsis. That's
almost
like a 130-page book.
Yeah. So I ended up I'm turning that into a full-length book now. But I'd say 20% of it, maybe 25%, about 20% actually occurs in prison. Because it's about how I wrote the book. It's about him helping me with my sentence. Like he helped me with my sentence before I started writing his story. So there's that. So I'm feathering that in with his actual story and then where the two kind of connect. So a lot of that takes place in prison. I have another story about a guy. This one actually, Amazon took it off.
Did they delist your book?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Do you have any?
Oh, I know why. The guy I wrote the story about is a guy named Marcus Schrinker. He was committed of a fraud, and it was committed of a fraud. What did that mean? What does that mean?
He committed fraud.
And he was running a Ponzi scheme. And when the authorities came to arrest him, he took his airplane out, flew it up, and called in a distress signal and said that his windshield had imploded. And the plane was going down, and then he jumped out of the plane.
Holy shit.
So, his parachute, he parachutes down thinking the plane will fly out over the Gulf and crash. And it would have, except that when the door opened, the drag was more than he had anticipated, and it runs out of fuel about a mile or two from the Gulf. And it ends up crashing in a wooded area. And so when the police show up there and they find it, the windshield is not imploded. So they know right away, well, that's not true. And the back door is open. So they find him like 3 days later in a campground or something. I mean, he's just an idiot. But it's an amazing story. And what's interesting is that when he approached me in prison, he wanted me to write this story about how he hadn't done anything wrong. It was his wife at the time had bilked these clients out of money, and he wasn't him, and he only took the charge because he didn't want his children to lose their mother. I mean, it's a whole just BS. So I realized right away he's a pathological liar. I mean, and all of his victims say it. The U.S. attorney says it. I mean, they don't say like he's lying. They say it's pathological. He can't stop lying.
Sure.
So I write his story, but I'm also kind of coaxing the truth out of him. I'm presenting him with documents. Like he'll tell me one story. Oh, Matt, he said, I was never sued. You were never sued? No, I was never sued. Was your company ever sued? No. Were you ever sued on behalf of the company? Were you sued individually? No. Okay, so you've never been sued, never been served papers? No, never. Of course not, Matt. Okay, here's a lawsuit from Mutual of Omaha, sued you for $1.1 million. What? That's crazy, Matt. What? I can't. Where'd you get this? I go, what do you mean where'd I get it? You signed for it. Here's who signed for it. And then I go, and he's like, have you ever been sued before? He'd be like, oh, I never should have been sued here. No. I go, never been sued before? No, no. Okay. Here's another lawsuit. I mean, I pull out like 4 different lawsuits. Finally, he says, Matt, of course I was sued. I was sued all the time. I owned a large wealth management company. It would be strange if I wasn't sued. Okay,
That
well, great,
guy's
Mark.
so
Well, tell me
fucking
about this.
mental.
Right. Tell me about this lawsuit. And then he would tell me about what happened. But so I get basically as much truth as you can get out of him. And I kind of convinced him eventually that he and I were kindred spirits. We're both con men. You don't have to lie to me, So I write up all the stories. Well, once the story came out, it did great for about 5 weeks. And then by that point, Shrinker had found out the story more, because I wrote it in prison with him. Then he got out. Then I got out. Then I self-published the story. He then went to Kindle or Amazon and said, hey, I don't know what exactly he said. Basically, he said he owned the intellectual property, and that the story was his. Either he said it was his, or he said that it was a lie and it was slander, whatever it was. And so they took it down. Now I went back to them. They said, well, we can't put it up unless you show us that you own the story. I sent them everything. I sent them the agreement. I sent them every single thing they asked for. And I'm in like a loop where they just keep sending me these form letters asking me for material, which I provide, and then they send it all over again. So I had to hire an attorney. He sent a letter a week or so ago, and I'm trying to get it back on. But throughout that story, about 20 to 25% of that story is me in prison with him, coaxing him into what really happened. So I could see like that being a series, because it's me writing the story. The Frank Amadeo story about It's Insanity, it's me inside with Frank writing the story. That's only 20%, maybe 15, 20% about me and him.
Mm-hmm.
But it still could be a series because it's constantly back and forth between me and him telling the stories.
Yeah, sometimes Amazon customer service can be a little bit inconsistent, to put it nicely, with how they handle issues. I don't know if sending a letter to Amazon will really do much of anything right now. They sometimes take a while to respond, but hopefully that can get sorted out.
Yeah, well, I had a lawyer write the letter. It's a demand letter.
Right.
So, I mean, hopefully to their legal department, it would be, you would think that another lawyer would look at it and be like, okay, well, we're clearly wrong here. I had the lawyer analyze the whole thing, the contract, the agreement, everything. So you'd think that they would go, that clearly has provided everything they've asked for. They're just not processing the information.
Yeah, that would be the perfectly logical thing to hope for. Hopefully it plays out like that. So yeah, who the hell plans an airplane crash? Like, how do you orchestrate that and then say, oh, I'm just going to parachute out? Like, that's just so crazy to me.
Oh, he was on 2020. He was on the news. He's been in every newspaper on the planet. And there's newspaper articles in Japan about the guy. I mean, think about how brazen that is.
Yeah.
Tried to fake his own death.
It's fucking crazy.
That just doesn't happen a lot. You hear, that's a movie type thing. That's insane.
Yeah, I've never heard of anyone trying to fake their death with an airplane crash like that. Like,
yeah,
it's pretty crazy. I did notice on your website that you were looking for a copy editor or like an editor to work on your books. Is that something you're still looking for?
God, I think more like a proofreader. I mean, this is the problem is, I can't afford an editor.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm just having people read the books and try and find typos.
Yeah, I mean, even trying to self-edit, as you know, doesn't work just because you're always going to miss a lot of typos. Hey, I'll tell you the truth. Editors do cost money. Sometimes it costs as much as $300 for a 50,000 word manuscript, and that's on the cheap end.
Right.
If you need like a proofreader, someone to just like do spell check and like do basic work, have you considered going on Fiverr.com? Fiverr.com.
Right.
And perhaps find someone cheap, like 1/100 of a cent 0.001 cents per word to proofread your work and get it done that way. Unless you have reliable people that are proofing for you for free, that's something you could consider as well.
I mean, my manuscript or my memoir I put out pretty quickly. The last couple of books I put out, because what happened was I initially did the Concrete podcast, and it got like in 2 months it got over 1 million hits. I had no way to monetize that. I didn't have my memoir wasn't up. So before I did the next one, I went out right away and had a couple people read my manuscript, and then I just put it. I self-published it, whatever you want to call it. I self-published it, and there were typos, but at least it was up for sale. And then I took it back down and I reviewed it again, got a bunch of the typos, and I've actually gone through it. I'm going to go through it again and hit it again. I've had somebody else read it who's caught a few more. I'm just trying to periodically catch them and then make the edits and put it back up. As far as an actual editor, I'm not really concerned about it. Nobody that reads the book really thinks, oh, this doesn't fit, or you ought to change this. That just doesn't really happen.
True.
I had years for people to read the book. The problem with the typos is that when I got out of prison, I had to retype the book. I didn't have an e-copy of the book because I was in prison when I wrote it. So now it's got to be typed. That's where the problem came in. You try typing an entire book without any typos.
Right, it's impossible. Yeah, and something to consider is also perhaps if you have email signups through your newsletter, you can maybe ask like 20 or 30 people to just go through your ebook and see if they can find typos. And that's another free way of getting people to proof your books.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what I like I said, that's what I've been doing.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I'm just going to leave it open here. Like, where do you see your future going? Like, what would actually fulfill you? Like, as you know, money doesn't automatically make you happy. Fulfillment will make you happy. Like, what'll fulfill you in your future?
I mean, here's what money does is it gives me the freedom to do what I want. So,
of course.
Part of that is obviously I would just like to make enough money to continue to be able to write. It'd be my full-time thing. I love researching the stories. And I don't know, do you write fiction or nonfiction?
I've written nonfiction as my own name, but I actually use ghostwriters for my romance publishing brand. But that's a whole other story.
Okay.
It's like a publishing business for me.
Okay. Well, writing nonfiction is, it's more labor intensive, I think, because I'm not coming up with something. I'm having to work within a certain, certain confines. So, I'm ordering documents. I'm ordering the Freedom of Information Act. I'm checking dates. I'm checking names, and you get different reports in, and it leads you in a different direction. You have to kind of figure out how to stay within the story and what's important to mention, what helps further the actual overall story. So, and then you have to interview people. So it's time consuming, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot more, in my mind, interesting than nonfiction. I'm sorry, than fiction, because I have to try and make the story work with what I've got.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, that's a challenge. And so it's, I think it's a lot of fun. I would just love to continue on with, like I said, I'm turning the one synopsis into a book. And then I have another story that I'm working on, which I think is amazing. What's amazing about it is that nobody ever really ran with it. So so I'm ordering these documents and getting them. I'm building a timeline and really figuring out what happened here. And so I'd love to be able to get to a point where I brought in enough money that I could continue to do that. And then ultimately, obviously, my goal is to have these things turned into documentaries and an actual series. So I was working with a company called Blumhouse.
Mm-hmm. I know Blumhouse.
Yeah. And we had several meetings. I've been working with a guy named Rothbart. He does documentaries and directs, and he's a writer for GQ magazine. And the Blumhouse thing, I just don't. It just, everything takes so long. It just doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. So, so it's just someone just walks in. Anyway, so I'm working on these different stories, and like the Blumhouse deal doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. I've got other producers that want to option the stories, and we're negotiating the length of time for that option. I'm not sure if you've optioned anything.
Not yet.
A lot of times they come in, they want you to sign like 18 months, 18-month options. It's like, if it takes you 18 months to pitch this story and get a deal, then you don't know what you're doing. Not waiting 18
connections
months.
If it takes
right,
that long. They're just cold calling and hustling around.
They're trying to tie you up.
Yeah.
So, I'm negotiating with, no, you got 3 months or you've got 6 months. And so that's what I'm doing. And what the nice thing about the option is that they always come in like, oh, we've already got somebody interested. Do you? That's great. Why do you need 18 months then? You already have a buyer. So they'll pitch it both ways. They get you excited, then they ask for this ridiculous amount of time. It's like, that doesn't make sense. So I've got several of the stories that I haven't signed the options yet because what they're saying doesn't make sense. We're going back and forth. And but ultimately, I'd love for these stories to be turned, because the synopses, let's face it, I am giving them away for free. They're on the website. I paid to have them narrated. Mm-hmm. You can read them. I have photographs of the subjects that are available. I have, everything's available for free. But so I'm trying to turn those into options and get series or films made of some type. And it's just a time-consuming process.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, you are leaving money at the door from not having them available on Audible and such. I have to say, though, honestly, Matt, you have a very high level of awareness when it comes to like what's being presented to you. I guess it comes through the years of working with fraudsters. Like it seems like it's at this point hard to fool you. Would that be accurate to say?
I think, probably only because I've been fooled so many times. While I was incarcerated, I wrote a book, and I really got screwed over on the book, and I didn't realize how skeezy Hollywood is. I just assumed everybody was a professional and they did what they said they were going to do, and I didn't realize it was all this kind of double speak. They're saying one thing but they mean something else. They go sign here. I had a person I've been dealing with, and they continually tell me, we're partners in this, we're partners in this, we're partners in this, we're going to be partners. Then they sent me an option, and like the second paragraph down, it specifically says, we're letting you know we are collaborating together, we are not partners. I mean, this is the second paragraph down, specifying we are not partners. I hadn't had a conversation with this producer yet where he didn't say, we want to be partners with you in this. You just sent me an option. So they'll say one thing and have you sign something else. And so you start to really realize you need to read what you're signing.
Well, yeah, and I think they're also underestimating your intelligence when it comes to these things, thinking that you're just going to give your book options away.
Right.
Now with that, and I'll say honestly, even anywhere where there's money to be made, there's always going to be shady people, to put it nicely. Yeah. And you'd be surprised, even in publishing and internet marketing with books, you still have to keep your guard up, as you'll soon see, hopefully.
Yeah.
So,
fortunately,
that's the way it is.
Hey, I'm working on it. I'm going to figure it out. I've got plenty of time. The way I see it is I got plenty of time to make this work. I mean, my original out date from prison was 2030.
Right.
So I can screw around until 2030 and start over with nothing and still be in the same position. So True. I'm perfectly okay with, not making a whole bunch of money, struggling to do what I really enjoy doing. And I can do that until I make it work or I fail. And, I can always go get a job working at Fedex.
No, man, that's very humble for you to say, but
Oh,
I can
it's
just
not.
tell your success with writing and maybe even filmmaking is inevitable. Like you're a hustler. You have the connections, or you're
I have,
developing the connections, and you've got the work coming up. So
yeah,
it's
and I have a lot
inevitable.
of, hopefully I'm working with two producers right now, and hopefully at least two of my stories are going to be turned into documentaries,
Awesome, and you might
which would
even
be great.
who knows? You could land a Netflix special, an Amazon Prime special. You
Right.
never
That's
know.
going to do wonders for the book sales.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I would love, some of these things would be great for series. You know, yeah, I actually, one of my books that, like you said, that it's not selling, but I posted it. I've never done a thing with it because people buy my memoir, Shark in the Housing Pool. They then turn around and they buy this other book I wrote called The Program. The program's just me being in prison, going through this drug program. I don't actually have a drug problem. I just went into the program to keep myself from being shipped from the prison I was in. If you're in a program there, if you're in like a drug program or there's something called the free program, if you're in these different programs, they won't move you.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to be moved from the prison I was in because I was writing several stories, and my mother, it's only an hour away from my mother to come see me. Well, I didn't want to be moved because my mom was in her 80s, in her late 80s at the time. She's never going to, they moved me anywhere. It's not going to be an hour away.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
So to do that, I go into the drug program and they keep me there. And I kind of went in and out a few times to keep me at the prison. So I almost complete it, and then I drop out, and then I wait a few months, and then I go back in just to keep me there. And but it's just the insanity of being in a drug program in prison. And it's just pure insanity. And it's hilarious. It's basically a comedy. And but yeah, I put the book up maybe a month or so ago, and I don't do anything with it. But it's selling, a copy here, a copy there. Never pushed it. So
Yeah, just because you, like I keep saying, your brand, like people are going to read through your books, even if you aren't like pushing it. But it would help to position every piece that you're putting out to at least get pushed with your email newsletter and make more money, because it helps make you more money.
yeah. Well, yeah, like I said, the money is what helps you do what you want to do. Hey, I have a
Absolutely.
question for you.
Yeah.
On your camera, you have a whole blank area here. Like you're in the lower left-hand corner. You're not in the center of the camera.
Maybe it's mirrored for you.
That,
I'm on the right side on my screen. Maybe it's
yeah.
left for yours. Yeah. My camera is like off center. I'm not using my computer webcam. I need to get a better setup as I go along.
Well, I was wondering, like, why are you doing it that way? I thought maybe there was a reason. Like, are you planning on putting my image in the upper right-hand corner or something? I don't know.
It'll be side to side, but also reason being, I have a mirror right behind me, and I just don't want to show what's going on in front of me. So I kind of hit it. But I'll fix up my setup.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
It's just curiosity. It's not a judgment. I'm not saying you need to do anything. I didn't know if there was a reason. I shot a video the other day, or a podcast the other day, where I'm going to be reviewing movies, and the guy did it so that I'm here. So I do the whole thing, only I'm back more like this, because up here is going to be the movie screen.
Mm.
So that's what I thought maybe you were doing.
Like a green screen? Nah.
Like, no,
Just
not a green screen, the actual movie I'm reviewing where they show the scenes. It would
ah.
take up part of the image. So I thought maybe you were going to have my image up there while you talk to me. I don't know. I was just curious.
It'll be
You
a
can edit
side by
that
side.
out. You can leave it in or edit it out. I don't know. I'm just saying.
I'll leave it in. That's a good
Yeah,
insight
that's
on
fine.
there. That's
I don't know
cool.
why people, what's funny? I did this whole thing, right? The video, the review, the movie review, and the guy that's cutting it up, he contacted the producer of it, and he came back and said, "Look, we want to do a bloopers reel." And I was like, "Okay, so we'll put both of them up." And I'm like, "Okay, why is that?" And he's like, because the guy just said that the blooper reel is hilarious, because I keep I couldn't pronounce this one guy's name. So I get upset and I'm like, well, what the hell? Why don't you, I start screaming and yelling. I'm always cracking jokes. I'm joking about this, joking about that. And the guy said, the blooper reel is hilarious. He said,
Nice.
we got to do the blooper reel. So they're going to do a
Got to
blooper
put that
reel.
in there.
We'll see what happens.
I have a totally, kind of off-topic question for you. With everything going on right now with COVID, and as you know, with unemployment and those EDD cards, would it be fair to say, based on your experience, is there a lot of fraud going on right now with those unemployment cards?
I mean, I'm certain there is. There's all kinds of look. Anytime you can take someone's identity, or anytime there's any type of a program available, there's always going to be some type of identity theft, fraud. I mean, look, it's the fact is that the fraud can be committed before they realize that it's an issue, and you can get millions and millions and millions of dollars way before the government realizes, before the government starts coming back and saying, getting reports that these people that, hey, I'm now applying for my stimulus check, and you guys are saying I already got it, but I didn't get it. Trust me, the fraudsters are extremely proactive. They see a loophole, and they have no scruples. So the things that you think, oh, well, that shouldn't be an issue because, it's a good cause. So nobody would do that. Listen, good cause, that's an opening. They have no problem collecting money for the salvation, or for the for the Cancer Society.
Yeah, there's new COVID scams every day.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
right. It's fair game, and there's nobody. They're not feeling bad because they feel like it's the government's money,
right?
And it's perfectly okay, or it's the IRS's money, or it's the I can just tell you, personally, from committing frauds, it's very easy to justify your scam to yourself so that you sleep at night. It's just part of what makes, criminals are sociopaths, and that's what helps you get through it. And where a normal person just simply won't do that, they wouldn't even consider it. As a fraudster or con man, you could very easily justify it to yourself.
Right. So even with the developments in technology and with the intrusiveness of like the NSA and other governmental agencies, are there still a lot of loopholes, generally speaking, in the system?
Yeah, every time they come out with a new program, how can you stop it? First of all, even the technology that's developed. I mean, remember, like when you would call to activate a credit card, you have to call from your home number, right? So you have to call from your home number. This is how this was one of the things that was 10 years ago. The new thing was the credit card company. You could order the credit card. They would send it to you. You get it. You have to call from your home number. That's how they verified it was you. You don't even have to talk. You just call up and punch in the numbers.
Right. I remember
active. Right. So first, I had a buddy in prison. He said the first thing I did, he would go out to areas. He would get some people in the bank would give him people's information. He'd then go out to where they live. He'd order the credit card. He'd get their phone number. He'd use the spoof app with their phone number in it. Order the credit card, have it overnighted. Keep in mind, the credit card company thinks, well, there's two forms of, there's two layers here. One, we're delivering it to their house. Their address is on the credit report. That's verified. They're one, telling us what the address is. They're two, we're sending it to that address. So it verifies you told me your address, and your address is showing up on your credit report. We know that's your address. We're going to mail it there. Definitely getting to you. Two, you have to call us from your home phone number. That home phone number has been a part of your credit report, and the Nexus system or whatever system they're using. They know that. So how do you get around that? This guy would call up, say, I'm John Doe, give him the information, order the card, get a $20,000 credit card, say yes, overnight it. Then he'd drive his car, park in front of your house, wait with you in the house even, doesn't care. FedEx pulls up. They go to deliver the card. He gets out of his car, starts walking towards the front door, turns around and says, "Hey, is that for me? My name's John Doe." And they go, "Yeah, are you Mr. Doe?" "I'm absolutely Mr. Doe." "Oh, can you sign here?" He'd sign for it, standing in your front yard.
Wow.
He'd take the card, go back, sit in his car, use the spoof ad to call the credit card company, which the spoof ad makes it seem like it's calling from your house. So on their thing, it shows up as their house, and they'd activate the card. He'd then turn around, take the card, and he'd go run it up for $20,000 over the next 2 days.
That's crazy.
This is when that kind of thing came out. Within a few months, he'd already figured this out and did it for the next year or so.
Wow.
So, I mean, God knows how much money he made. I mean, these guys, they have scams. Like, even the scams they would tell me about, I'd be like, how did you figure that out?
It's just social engineering, I guess.
Right.
I mean, a lot
Absolutely.
of it's just social engineering.
Yeah, it's amazing. And everybody always says, wow, like, Matt, if you'd only put I had a comment on one of the concrete podcasts. The guy goes, "If only you'd use your superpowers for good." And what was funny about that was, even if everybody always says, "Oh, look how much money you'd have," you're right, I probably would have had a lot more money. But the bottom line is that crime simply pays too much initially. In the end, it doesn't, but up front it does.
Right.
And that's the issue. So of course these guys put so much time and effort into it. They're making tons of money
for the short term.
For the short term. Well, right. As a criminal, you just don't think you're going to get caught. Mm-hmm. It's just the arrogance and narcissism, and it's just cockiness. I never thought I'd get caught, and I got caught many times, and I always talked my way out of it.
Right.
Just kept talking my way out, getting over on it, get caught by banks, owe them a couple $1 million, caught, get out of it. Get caught by this bank, I owe them $100,000, let me pay you back. Get caught by this bank, arrested in banks, brought to the police station, talk my way out of it. They let me go. I mean, it's just insane.
Yeah, well, at least I hope that chapter of your life is over. So
we went off on that one. Sorry.
It's good, man.
Brought it up.
Listeners want to hear that, whether they're into publishing or maybe someone random wants to hear more from you. I mean, that's cool to add in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're nearing the end. I just want to say, if you ever need help or need tips for your writing or publishing, like how to use a certain system, advice on how to optimize something, feel free to reach out to me via email or text, and
definitely,
I'll help you out. So that'd be cool. So I also hear your phone ringing. So
I guess I don't know how to stop the computer from the instant messages.
Yeah,
I turned my phone off, but the computer's now doing it. Listen, I barely work anything. It's amazing that I got the Zoom to work. I had a guy come to prison, and he was telling me about his scam that he ran. Mm-hmm. And it was about iPhones. It was about an iPhone scam. And he's like, and he kept saying, how on the iPhone this, how on the iPhone this. And I looked at him and I went, you realize there was no iPhone when I got locked up. Yeah. Your crime didn't even exist when I initially went to prison.
Right.
So no, I don't know how the iPhone works. This is magic to me. This is magic.
Yeah, a lot's changed in the last 13 and a half years, so almost 14 now. So yeah. I'm sure you're going to pick up. You're obviously a smart guy. You just got to catch up with the technology and you'll be back up to speed. So it's a process.
People keep telling me that.
You will.
All right.
Okay, well, thanks so much for taking the time and the patience to share your story with everyone and for being on my channel. And I'll provide a link to your website on the channel below, or if you're listening on Spotify, it's insidetruecrime.com. And I hope to speak with you and work with you in some capacity in the future.
Well, hey, also my book is it's Shark in the Housing Pool.
So Shark in the Housing Pool. I'll put a link below on YouTube. So Shark in the Housing Pool for those of you listening.
And it's on Audible.
Spotify. Oh, and it's on Audible.
Yeah.
So we'll just get your other books on Audible. And
cool. I'm working on that.
Yeah.
It takes time.
It takes time. All right, man. So thanks again for signing on, and hope to see you later.
All right. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Take care.